5 more crappy bosses to torture and torment me with, balanced out with 5 more paranormal entities to make things a little bit more interesting. Let's do it. Poltergeist, or noisy ghost or spirit in German, is exactly what it describes. A phenomenon believed to be a ghostly presence that interacts with our world through means such as loud noises like knocking or banging, moving or sometimes destroying physical objects, and in some bizarre cases, pinching, biting, pushing, or pulling of individuals. For some, this is just elaborate hoaxes, or sometimes cases of natural phenomenon that can be explained by other means. For others, it's a frightening experience and is viewed as one of paranormal activity's highest levels that should be cautioned due to its physical nature. Nonetheless, today we'll be taking a look at 5 examples of supposed poltergeist activity alongside these crappy bosses. Links to the original videos will be in the description below, so you can judge for yourselves if these examples are real or not. In this first clip, the opening describes that a camera was set up in this classroom for evaluation purposes, and that strange instances have happened in the past that was originally just brushed off as the nature of the college due to its high traffic with students and teachers. Of course, that was called into question after this was caught on tape.
What have you been doing this morning?
Safety in the community.
Excellent, thanks. Yeah, safety in the community. Okay, good, Stephen. So we've been talking about dangers that we might face when we're out and about. What dangers might we bump into? Stephen, don't do that, please. It's distracting. Right, okay, well, whoever it was, don't do that, please. Go on.
Drugs.
Drugs, excellent, yeah, drugs. Okay, so that's one thing. Someone give me another one then.
Strangers.
Strange.
I just moved on his own.
It definitely seemed that way, didn't it? Right, what we're going to do, we need to... I tell you what, guys, let's just go out for a minute. Follow me.
So, 2017 saw Crash Bandicoot come back in a way that felt like a triumphant return with the Insane Trilogy, a remake of the first 3 games that was crafted beautifully by Vicarious Visions, who did a phenomenal job at recreating this beloved PS1 trilogy. But as much as I enjoyed this compilation, Vicarious really made use of the term for better or worse, because for better or worse, this was in most cases a 1-to-1 remake. Obviously, they did change some things to make it more appropriate for 2017 standards, but then there were cases where it just boggles my mind why they decided to keep certain aspects the same. One of those aspects is the final fight with Dr. Neo Cortex in Crash 1. Cortex unfortunately falls into the category of underwhelming final fights where the boss before it ends up upstaging it, and for me that's kind of a no-no. Final bosses should be the final impression for a video game, to top everything off and make the player feel like he or she accomplished something, and providing something that just feels kind of epic to go through. That doesn't really happen here. You finally reach Cortex and all you're doing is running back and forth on a blimp dodging his shots until you're allowed to spin one of his shots back at him. There's not really any skill involved because it's a case of trial and error. You're most likely going to die a few times due to learning the pattern, but once you get the pattern down it becomes too easy. Mind-numbingly easy if you ask me. But the biggest problem about this fight is when you compare it to the previous fight with Brio. You realize that he should have been the final boss. He throws potions, summons slime creatures, and once you get his health down he turns into a Hulk-like being and the second phase starts. Without a doubt, Nitrous Brio is the most fleshed out boss fight in Crash 1. He actually takes a bit of figuring out, but once you do get the knowledge you need to beat him, it's actually kind of a fun fight that feels fulfilling, something that most other bosses lack, especially Cortex, which again, final fight, could've and should've been more. Now, to be fair, like I mentioned, a case could be made for all the bosses in Crash 1, that they're all pretty simple and it's just a matter of figuring out the generic pattern, but when the second final boss upstages the final one, well, you kinda screwed up. This is one of the earliest and most notorious ghost/poltergeist sightings caught on video to have been uploaded to YouTube, and is still one of the creepiest. The pantry ghost for over a decade has puzzled and frightened many viewers due to its ominous and unsettling phenomenon, and to this day is still debated by many if this footage is real or not, so much so that a 40-minute documentary has been made about these set of clips. The most infamous of these clips is one of the supposed skeptics of the video being invited to investigate the pantry. At first he seems to be unimpressed with nothing happening as of yet, but he soon gets a shock he certainly wasn't expecting. Take a look.
Oh my god. Oh my god. The hell is that? Oh shit. Oh my god. Oh my god. Go, go, go. Whoa. Go, go. Dude. Look out, look out, look out. Oh my god. What the? I don't know. That's crazy. I told you.
Donkey Kong Country. Easily one of the biggest must-haves you need for the SNES. One of the most appealing games visually, and at the time, the most revolutionary in this department. Well, you've heard the story many times on why this game is so important to the SNES's success. But there is one dark spot on this game and is easily the weakest part of it in my opinion. You guessed it, the bosses. Not gonna sugarcoat it, most of these guys suck. Basically, the idea was to turn normal enemies big and give them one pattern that doesn't really change as time goes on. First off, the naughties. Just bounce on their head a set amount of times and their speed will pick up a bit. One more than the others, but not much has changed. Master Necky fights. Practically nothing changes this time around other than how many nuts they shoot out of their mouths. Ew. Again, bop them on the head until they go bye-bye and die-die. And then Dumb Drum is essentially enemy rush mode. And well, as you can see, unlike the rest of the game, most of these bosses are very underwhelming. And the closest it ever gets to creativity is the Queen Bee and King K rule fights. And even then, they're nothing to write home about. Compare these to the bosses of 2 and 3, and it's no contest. Now, I'm not gonna give the game crap because future games did better. No, that's supposed to be the case. Sequels are meant to be bigger and better. But this is Donkey Kong Country, a game that was oozing great game design in so many aspects. Mechanics and level design were top notch for the most part. Musically, it's beautiful, and again, graphically, holy fuck! Then we get to the bosses, and honestly, it's kind of jarring just how much of a step back it was to everything else. These feel more like Mario bosses, to be honest, which is usually a low point in that series too. Now, this pick is going up for similar reasons as Cortex did, and in the sense that they're straight up underwhelming. And if I didn't point out the similarities on these two picks, you guys would have probably called me out for it. But I feel the difference here is that with Crash, that was one boss. Here, this is 3/4 of them. They might not be bad in a broken or frustrating sense, but bad in a boring or unremarkable sense, which sometimes, that can be even worse. You ever have a dog start going nuts or become very timid for some reason? Hell, even lock sights on a specific area? Well, your pet might be seeing or sensing something we as humans can't. Many people have considered that most animals seem to have a sixth sense, as they can detect things that would otherwise fly over our heads. One of those things is apparently spirits that have since passed on. In this clip, we can see two dogs casually relaxing until radio interference happens and we see things start to move about on their own. Some may say this is a clever hoax, and it may very well be. It's hard to say either way. But I can tell you one thing. When it comes to animals sensing something we cannot, well, I'm gonna trust their instincts a hell of a lot more than I'll ever trust my own. So this year I finally decided to pick up Shovel Knight. Some may think, are ya fucking nuts? Why the hell did you wait so long? Well, I wanted to wait until all the DLC came out, but since King of Cards was taking so long, I decided to hell with it and just get it now. And I can see why this game was praised as much as it was. It's a really good game, and you can see just how much love and attention to detail that went into making something feel really special that reenacts the NES days pretty damn well. Hell, it was so successful that alongside Shantae, Shovel Knight has become the poster boy of indie games, which is pretty impressive considering this is Yacht Club Games' only game so far. Talk about the ultimate success story. But that's not to say the game is flawless, as there are certain elements that kinda bug me, with one of them unfortunately being the final boss in the Spectre of Torment campaign, which is a real shame shame because Spectre Knight is hands down my favorite character to play as in this game. At the time of recording this, of course. King Knight might change that. I love what he brought to the table to change up the gameplay. His parkour where he runs up walls a bit or using his scythe as a homing attack to reach higher areas was a great experience. It felt so rewarding once you got it down and started flying over the place, or taking out bosses without ever barely touching the ground after the first jump. If they ever do a sequel, Spectre Knight better return as a playable character. End of story. But unfortunately what was a solid campaign throughout just kind of falls apart at the end, simply due to this on-rails section where you're forced to constantly move forward and try and take out this big guy. It's kind of deceiving at first too. There's not too many sections where you get to use Spectre Knight's rail grinding mechanics, so in concept this is actually really awesome. The problem is you're over bottomless pits. And without a specific armor set, bottomless pits mean instant death, and there's knockback. Hell yeah, no. To me, this is the perfect example of the difference between challenge and difficulty. For example, the Enchantress you fight before him. Without a doubt, she is hard. You're gonna have to make use of everything you learned throughout the journey effectively, and even then she'll still kick your ass a few times. But it never feels cheap. If I die, well that's because I screwed up and wasn't competent to win yet. Here though, it doesn't feel like that. You could be doing a really awesome job dodging attacks and getting the most hits in that one time. But then bam, one projectile nails you and you fall to your death and you have to start the fight all over again. That's not fun. That's just aggravating, comes off as cheap because it's by chance that you got hit at the wrong place at the wrong time. It feels like it's out of your control, and the only reason why you lost was because of bullshit and not challenge itself. And that's counting the specific armor in mind. Granted, I know that's a bit of a theme or trait in the NES or SNES era of video games, but guess what? That shit died a long time ago for a reason, and it needs to stay dead. Cheap insta-kills like bottomless pits and knockback? Fuck off. Great game and even greater side campaign, but jeez, what a buzzkill to something that should have been an awesome ending. I'll let the footage speak for itself. That is one pissed off ghost. Oh boy, let's talk about one of the biggest letdowns in a game that was as amazing as Sonic Mania. I've gushed over Sonic Mania so much in the past. It's the best Sonic game to come out in a long ass time. Just about everything in it was really well done for the most part. Well, except for this wonderful douchebag that makes me excited anywhere else but here. Yeah, fuck this fight. It was easily the lowest point for otherwise what was excellence. And it starts out oh so promising too. You just finished up Stardust Speedway that's been blasting you all over the place at blazing speeds, and then you finally transition to this hologram of Metal Sonic that you of course break. Shortly after, the Metal Doppelganger appears, and the music just intensifies that feeling of that you're in for an epic fight. And at first, it delivers. You and Metal Sonic start racing at high speeds all the while you try to dodge his attacks. It's quick, exhilarating, and always feels rewarding to dodge them successfully. Easily one of those badass feeling moments in Sonic Mania. But then we get to this part. And what was once an epic and intense race just turned into the biggest grinding halt ever if you didn't figure out the trick on how to get past this section. The biggest problem was that it was based off the fact that spin dashing was the intended way of getting hits on him here, except that the game does virtually nothing to let you know about that. The closest it gets is when you realize the little Silver Sonics will ricochet off of you. So I'm sure many of you thought the same thing I did at first, and that was where you were gonna have to juggle them into him. And newsflash, not an easy task. It's doable, but it can feel impossible at points. I mean hell, this was the first time in like 20 years that I actually timed out in a 2D Sonic game. You know, that's actually pretty impressive just how big of an oversight that was if I'm doing that. And then when you finally get past it, you do another bit of dodge racing, and then you get to here and... Was the game just taking pity on us at this point? It was impossible to lose here. Simply because if you got hit, the spike wall would hold onto your rings, and by the time you got out of the knockback animation, you were good to go. Talk about a pathetic ending to a fight. But I mustn't have been the only one who felt this way, because a year later when the Plus DLC dropped, this fight hands down got one of the biggest overhauls throughout Mania, second only to a new stage for Mirage Saloon in Encore mode. And it's day and night between the two. What I viewed as easily the worst fight in the game boosted up to the best, except the damage was done. You can't hide what was once there, cause guess what? Dumbass fanboys like me played 2017 Sonic Mania way too much. Blockbuster. A missed relic of the past that for many was a fun experience at the beginning of your weekend. Although that might not have been the case for this unfortunate late night employee. As described, the Blockbuster in Mexico was apparently a hotspot for poltergeist activity, where we see this lone employee stacking DVDs during the late hours of the night. But much to his dismay, DVDs continuously decide to fly off the shelves, something I'm sure the owners of this dead franchise wish still happened. At first, his cart seems to be pushed, which causes him to question what just happened a bit, but decides to continue stocking the shelves. Shortly after, a DVD flies off the shelf once he moves to another section. Again puzzled and confused, he resumes his work and places the DVD on the shelf once more, possibly thinking his mind is playing tricks on him during the late hours of the night. But it's hard to pass this off as trickery of the mind when the case decides to jump off the shelf right in front of him. Surprisingly, he continues to place it back on the shelf before more fly off and he finally decides to book it. I'll give this man courage. Most wouldn't react as calmly as he did if others witnessed what he saw. Clearly, he deserved a raise, though considering where he works, he's kinda lucky to even have a job there. Whenever I think about bosses in video games, whether they be bad or good, Mario Party isn't usually a series that comes to mind, but when you really look into it, there actually is kind of a history of them being here. Even before 9 made the concept more popular for the series, I guess. As far back as the very first game, they've been there, with Toad being the final hurdle in a round of slot car derby, which that alone sounds like a fucking nightmare, but we're gonna focus on Mario Party 2 this time around. So, Minigame Coaster, oh how I loathe thee. What is essentially challenge mode for the minigames, where you'll go through different worlds and complete minigames, all the while earning coins for extra lives. Run out of lives and it's game over and you have to start over at the beginning of the world you're in. So that right there sounds kinda depressing where you have to redo some progress if you game over, and you fucking game over in this mode. But let's check out all the hoops you have to jump through to get to the boss of this of a mode. So first thing is unlocking the mode, which is gonna be a while, as you've gotta buy and unlock every available minigame up until that point, which involves RNG, so you may luck out and get all the minigames in one go as you play through all the boards normally, or you're most likely gonna be like me and had to set all the players' to computer on a 50-turn session, only in hopes that the one minigame you need finally pops up. Like no shit, it took me 90 turns before the cocksucker finally showed up. But whatever, you finally unlocked Minigame Coaster. Next hoop, you're gonna notice that you're not allowed to play on hard difficulty. Oh yes, you're stuck on medium difficulty for now, which means you're gonna have to play through this mode not once, but twice. Oh. Now, it's not to say you won't get anything out of beating it on medium difficulty. You'll get this lovely blue tree that represents the item minigames, cause yeah, they're the most awesomest minigames in Mario Party 2. Kiss my ass. Alright, so you finally beat 2/3 of the minigames on medium, and now you're ready to do them again, plus more on hard mode. And to be fair, majority of them are manageable if you master the minigames. Well, except for when the game decides you're not winning on some of them. Mecha Marathon, you can lick my balls. This was a perfect example of the developers not actually playtesting this stupid ass mode. I'd like to say I'm fairly competent at button master minigames, as I'm usually getting pretty decent scores. But here, it doesn't matter how good you are. If the game decides you aren't winning, then there isn't one goddamn fucking thing you can do about it. And there were a couple of them that pulled this crap. I shouldn't have been feeling muscles in my arm ache a bit the next day. Like seriously, I had to redo these button master minigames so many damn times that I actually had to burn my lower arms as if I was using a fucking dumbbell. There's something wrong with that picture. Now, I know some of you may think I'm cheating for using save states. First off, here's some N64 footage of when I beat the game on the original hardware, so meh. I already did it once. Actually, no, I've done it twice in the past. Secondly, I'm actually kind of glad I used them since this time I actually maxed out the lives and coin counter. But it also showed me that I was in the right to lose my shit in the past trying to complete this, since it showed me on Mecha Marathon that you're at the mercy of RNG. But sadly, this is not the worst part. Oh fuck no. Next, we get the hot rope jump. Essentially what I consider to be the mini-boss of Minigame Coaster, and most would think you would just have to outlast your CPU opponents. If it was only that simple. Oh no, the developers decided to be total pricks that day. Not only do you have to outlast your opponents, you have to make 50 jumps in one go. Does this sound bad yet? Yes? Well, it just keeps going. So you finally make it to the end and you're greeted by Toad, who says you have to redo Minigame Coaster all over again. At this point, I'm dumbfounded the first time around. They did not seriously just pull out ghosts and goblins on me, did they? Do I seriously have to do this a third fucking time? Well, I don't know what happens if you do click yes and agree to go back to the beginning, but if it does send you all the way back, then that's just beyond dickheadedness. Luckily, I've always told them to fuck off. And by the looks of it, that was the right answer, because another Toad comes in to reveal it's actually Baby Bowser and the game was flat out trolling you. But now you finally get to face off against the boss of Mario Party 2. You play another round of Shell Shock, but this time it's against 3 Baby Bowsers and they're all programmed to target only you. At this point, I'm done with this mode. The crap you have to go through to get here is infuriating half the time because, well, it's out of your control at points. And the difficulty isn't for the faint of heart. You'll get your ass beaten to the point it bleeds hard, where the final boss of 3 Baby Bowser tanks actually feel tame in comparison to everything else. And to be fair, it's not the worst thing in the world, but by the time you actually get to these little bastards, if you were like me, you were fuming at this point, making more mistakes than you would normally, just adding more to the frustration and chaos. And I like to believe I'm pretty tame when it comes to getting frustrated at losing at a video game. I'll usually tell it to fuck off if I think it was a cheap loss, but then move on and try again. But this is one of the few times in my life as an adult where I'm losing my shit and wanted to punch something. And not jokingly. Like straight up, the last time I had to do this on the N64 version, my cousin Josh could hear me through the vents just tee-heeing at me as I'm fucking losing my shit. Because of the whole bullshit that it makes you go through. Like, I'm done with it. Like, I'm never fucking touching this mode again. Never, ever, ever. You know the term, the reward is the journey itself? Fuck you.